Well, the truck needs that mechanical service, but rather than tearing down the engine and becoming immobilized, I'm going to work on another project that needs to happen here. This is an 8-foot full-length truck bed, and this is a haggard, old, used SystermOne Ladder Rack, which is one of the better ones, I think, especially starting with it's made of aluminum, but it has a lot of integrated stuff like these. This isn't going to be a breakdown of these racks, but you know, cool stuff like these things here that will move up and down like a T-slot. This is a custom extrusion. They're all probably custom extrusions of theirs. So there's a T-slot on the top and a T-slot on the inside face, and etc. They make a toolbox that's called a side access box. It sits on that top of the side rail, and it looks like this. And it fits in there between the uprights on whatever length bed you have. And it's got this cast aluminum handle thing and these cast aluminum ends to the top and the bottom. And you can have these set up however you want with dividers and stuff. But the nice thing is you can just walk up, reach in here and get what you need, and then close the whole thing back down, ostensibly, and latch it. And it sits behind the plane of those uprights. The other cool thing about this system is that underneath this, I only have a drawer on one of them, the other box here. But underneath it, the screw can stick out of the sawhorse and rip your pants. There can be a big long drawer. And so when you tip the tailgate down, then you can pull that drawer out right in front of you and get in there, send the drawer back in, close the tailgate. And so I've got one of those drawers on these here. But these are for a short bed truck, because if you notice, I've got a behind the cab toolbox. And I just didn't get quality length information out of the seller. He said they were 68 or something. Forget exactly what he said, and I knew that I could turn this carriage bolt around to gain a little room there. I knew that I could move this upright down to the end of there to gain half of an inch there. Up at the front, it can move forward to gain half of an inch. But then I start running into things because I don't quite have enough room basically between here and there to install that bad boy. And I was thinking I could gain an inch or two here, but I could maybe get an inch from here to there when the top is open. But the top hits the ratchets right now, and so moving over another inch is going to close it more, which makes it harder to get these bins and my tool bag and stuff in and out. So I was wondering if this certainly sticks out less than that in terms of the ratchet. So maybe the ratchet body would sit behind the truck cab, but I don't know if I'm moving this closer still that way. If that's going to work. And so essentially I've got to take all the carriage bolts and nylock nuts off of this thing into its kind of component parts, because I was thinking I would start with leaving this together and just slide it down this way, but it was never even really assembled correctly. This needs to move down flush with that, the way that it is down here, I want to say, or more so down here. And so this whole thing went on my truck when I bought it used, you know, and I never did anything but check the tightness of everything. So it looks like it's time to loosen everything up and jostle it all around and tighten it all back down, and then still barely have enough room for that side toolbox. And worst case scenario, it can be cut down in length, which I'm sure some of you said right out of the bat. Make them shorter. Well, to start with, there's the drawer on this one, so then the drawer's also got to be made shorter. And obviously, shorter isn't as much volume. It may even be a case where I come back to something shorter and wish I had the one more inch to be able to lay something in there. Now, it is annoying that they're not 72 inches, so I can't put a 72-inch level in that drawer and some other like common, you know, things that you would need that are going to stretch and need to be within those last couple of inches on a decision like this. These cast ends are welded into the box, and you know, because you could just cut a few inches off these extrusions, aluminum plate, and then put this back together again. But it's welded, and so that could be cut free. But then you really start to get, you got to move the gas shock connector over, and it really turns into quite the fabrication project that I'd like to avoid, especially because it's only doing something that reduces the utility of these, even if it's just by a little bit. Even if you argue that they're doing goddamn nothing when they're not even on the truck. But I digress. So that's the precursor to what this project should look like overall, and we'll see how far I get. Oh, right, to start with, these ratchets are installed with this strap, and then there's a T-slot that's in this extrusion, and so there's a short carriage bolt that the head is entrapped, and the square body just under the smooth head of the carriage bolt is supposedly not going to turn in this track, and then you can apply or take away a nut. But the problem is on this one up here, right to start with, that square portion of the carriage bolt up in there just spins freely. And so now basically we're down to holding the little stub end of threads that I've got. Or actually I could honestly I could even hold the nut at this point, because if I shove this guy up enough, there's enough of a window, and I had grabbed in there with needle nose locking pliers, try to hold that threaded shaft above the nut and then work on the nut. No dice. So now we're just going to reach up in there with the rotary tool and just cut that bolt off, and hopefully we haven't got to do this anymore. And if we do have to do it, we can actually get in there with that little rotary tool, because if we can't even get into the spot to do something like that, we're going to have a hell of an issue here. I've run into other carriage bolts on this that are already, they've rounded the aluminum, and I'm sure it was someone previous, because it's you got to feel that happening, and I didn't feel it happening. I just felt that it had happened. All right, we'll see how this goes. Okay, so as a matter of just trying to see how much room I actually need to create, I backed these off so that they're flush out here with this track, these uprights, which gives me a little bit of room past that axle, maybe 5/16 of an inch. And then over here, I went to this body line in this extrusion, because that's essentially where, I don't know if I can get it to focus. It's essentially where the square body of the carriage bolt that goes, the head is in the track on this here. Anyway, any more this way, any more this way with this, and one of the two pieces of hardware that hold it and assemble it to the rest of this thing aren't doing anything anymore. And so I went to the absolute limit on that and cleaned it up by trying to find a visual thing there. Now that means then, if I go tight with the top of this toolbox, I've got about 1/4 of an inch when I square up, probably, of clearance between here and there, which of course immediately as soon as this lifts, it might go to 45 degrees, but it's going to be way unhandy. And so I think I'm going to go from here, I'm going to put that at this body line, the reverse of the other end of this thing here, go to the limit of this piece of hardware, hang this off the back in an ugly kind of a fashion. But if I get done with overhanging these 4 points, and just, even if I have to omit that fastener, I can drill a new location in the middle here and just move down. The thing is, it's order of operations here, so if I decide by moving there that I can live with all of this, but I don't have a fastener, then I can take that component completely out, because those fasteners slide into this. The way that you disassemble this thing is kind of important, because sometimes you could get stuck on not being able to get a part off of a fastener that's got its head stuck in a T-slot. Long story short, we've got some more finagling to do. Also, this ratchet straps are complicating matters. I think I'm going to end up turning them out of the thing. The problem is with that this strap then is going around like no ladder. So we're going to need the strap to stay inboard. But then I can't even test to see if this, I think the cover to this toolbox, I don't know if it misses or not. It must miss, because it swivels about there. So it must roll up and miss. So that's not a problem, I guess. But I suppose we'll wait and see. I also need to get some fasteners slid into this track sticking up past these, so that I can slide the box down onto those. When the box is open, you can then see them and try to get them lined up, and at least get that on the track so it can be slid up and down. But if I commit to something, I'll be able to lock it down. And then the last part of those is that out here at the back, once you're all the way on board, there's a strap that goes straight up to probably this hole on one side or the other, or somewhere in the T-slot up on that thing, to support this whole thing. So it's an unhandy project, because it's a lot of trial and error with things that are longer than one guy can really deal with. And there are problems where, on the other end of this, for example, this has a nice square hole, so the smooth carriage head can go that way, but that makes the nut and the other end of the carriage bolt have to stick this direction. So I want, obviously, the smooth carriage end on there, the head of it, and come through here and put the nut on. But on this side, you can't see it, but this hole isn't square anymore. It's all rotten out and enormous. So I will at least have to have a hex head bolt here, which will take about as much height, I suppose. But then I'll have to hold it with a wrench and yada yada. It's a whole thing. All right, we'll see how this shapes up. Well, this is the point in the project where you question whether you were too smart for your own good. See, again, I chose not to get the full length side access toolbox, because I already had this. I got it for free. I like that I can fit plastic totes into it completely, and like chain and strap and other stuff like that that's sort of for excavation and heavy duty work and stuff can be in there, whereas this can be more of my carpentry and plumbing and electrical sort of quick access stuff. I don't want to consume most of these with that big heavy stuff. I didn't want to, and I had been thinking that, you know, with all three of these, even with those drawers, I still have a full 4x8, you know, and I can put probably 12 or more sheets of 3/4 inch plywood in here, which is nice, at least 10. However, you got to come down from here with these bars that support the rear end of these boxes, 2 of which are longer, 2 of which are shorter. And so at the rear I needed the long one. So the short one, I don't know that it's going to do me any good. I don't know what's any different about the arrangement. I mean, I feel like this cross section of this upright, the ratchet, the cross piece, it's just a repeating thing. So I don't know that we get any closer to it up there. I think that maybe because all 4 of these bars were in the one toolbox, because I went and got 2. Each of these came from a different place. Each of them came with 2 bars, but there's no telling whether one long and one short came with one toolbox and one short and one long came with the other one. Although I will say these 2 long ones, they had the same like RTV'd on washer situation here and there. So it seems to me that the long ones are what I need for my ladder rack, and then a shorter ladder rack. Because see, this length of upright probably looks a little bit funny on a smaller pickup, like a mini, like a Tacoma or something, not a full-size truck. So perhaps those are shorter, and the other toolbox that I got was hung from closer ratchet straps. So right away I'm thinking I'm going to be needing another set of these. The other problem is that whether they're long or short, they need to be at this other end, and there's no ratchet there, plus it adds interruption. So this is going to be very sort of complicated to get everything to play nice. Because it's like, even if I were to add material to this bottom plate, it'd have to be machined to have a T-slot in it so that the screw could go further, slide into it. Not to mention dealing with my allergies, dealing with C-clamps that didn't want to give it up, so I had to cut them off. And then I had been using those because I wanted to be able to take this whole ladder rack off and put it all back on the truck kind of easily. I've only done it once or twice, but with popping the 4C clamps, I could come in with the skid steer and the forks and get right underneath basically the middle of this upper portion, pick it right up and come away and set it down, and have just a regular pickup with, and everything could just stay put. So now I may have to use heavy self-tapping screws as designed here and screw right through this into the body of my truck, which is fine for once or twice. But if you start getting into attaching and unattaching that several times, you start to lose those threads, and then it starts to be a problem that way. So there are some real considerations to have here, but that's where I'm at right now, and we'll see if I can't. Also, this is sitting down because the cross piece is missing. So I'm going to make all the changes that I made on the left here over here on the right. I'm going to try and get the other box with drawer up on here and the other long bar that'll work on my truck down to get its back corner. And then I think with the crossbar, they'll be in there okay. I can't load them way up the front, and whether or not it interrupts with that other toolbox, it's going to be a bit of a kerfuffle. I mean, worst case scenario, I could notch these cleanly and just pop them out, set them together and make a quick milling machine pass or something. That, again, try to get it, you know, I might make it bigger and then bend a piece of aluminum and have the guys down at Weldall weld it in there like a finished opening, at least, instead of a raw opening. Maybe that would look a little bit nicer, because I mean, these, again, this is a $200, this is like $3,000 or $4,000 to get these side access boxes with drawers and a whole new ladder rack or something like that. The system brand new is a $200 or $250 for this ladder rack. So when I'm cutting on it, this again was free from the neighbor. These together were like $750 for the pair. So trying to do this whole thing for less than $1,000 over years of time waiting between operations here. So this is like the first wave. and then we'll see what happens. Well, classic mistake, thought too far ahead, and ended up with this box on this side. So when we came with this box, which has a drawer on it to install here, it was the other way around, and it was either swap the drawer or swap the box. So either way, we got the box swapped over to this side, put the one that was over here over there. Now it's got the old stowaway drawer, which will come right out of there if you want. But Jeremy's here and helped me out, and we're looking at like, what's the problem with this hole that somebody drilled, and then there's one up there, because it's like these other hangers that they got are shorter. And so I think that I think we looked at this already, so I think that the shorter hanger is for an overall shorter rack, for an overall shorter truck, which it would still clear this box. And so anyway, this is all that someone had, so they thought they needed to drill there, and ended up drilling way up here to get up to where they needed to be to hang this box from a full-size rack. So now we've got extra holes, which no one... See, when you get this, must be a one-size-fits-all, so there's cast-in dimples for different locations, and somebody drilled this location for this truck and then ended up here a couple of times trying to get it to hang level. And then over, that must have been the first one they did, and then the second one they knew exactly where they wanted the hole. But I re-drilled this, which is the appropriate location. So suffice to say, a hole and that hole, I'll have to fill with some polyurethane sealant or something at some point. But I've also got to hang the front of these now, see, because the hanger goes up to the body of the ratchet, and the body of the ratchet on this other end is way up at the front here. In fact, I'm going to have it hanging out towards the cab so that it can maximize the open angle of this. And so I've got to get to, well, the correct hole will have to be drilled here, but then I'm going to have to come up and bend over and roll out to get around this axle, which is what they do, which is going to also be in the way of this thing. And so it's like a question of whether to try and go up, or you know what I might be able to do is just go from one to the other with a finite length. Just go from one to the other straight across the truck. It would just go right straight through underneath there. That might be enough. Although they do work out on a plane right above the edge of this, so I could go over to there, or I could go through two holes. Maybe go through two of these and two on the other side with one piece of aluminum. Maybe I'll try that to start with, because this was only 30 bucks. We'll go right through basically here. Just, if I drill the holes precisely and then force this thing to bolt up, it'll ought to pull it up to level if I'm careful about it and don't do what the original person did, which was just drill any old where they think they need to drill until they find out they don't need to drill there. But yeah, maybe that would be enough to truss that out. I'm not going to load this with a ton of weight. That was the point of keeping this. That's got chain and all that heavy stuff in there, chain binders and full-blown tool boxes and stuff like that. This is mostly to have my guns in here, or so it came, this side came with these bad boys, which are the wrong color obviously, but what are you going to do? And then maybe I'll create something like this. I'd like to make it out of aluminum. I may start with plywood to make sure it's what I want, but then end up with something like this out of aluminum that'll hang even grinders and other stuff, and throw that across at least one of these, if not half of each of them or something underneath here. So I got a bunch of hand tools, a couple circular saws or something in there, and room for some of those cloth bags, those like these here that end up sitting on the floor of my truck because they can't get rained on, and get the, make more space available in the truck is the whole point here. And then put a 4-foot level and 2-foot level and 2 halves of a saw track someday, and sledgehammer and whatever else makes sense in one of those, and see if I can't find another drawer. I'll probably end up having to buy a toolbox with the drawer on it in the future, and I'll either like it better and put the whole thing on here, or just take the drawer off, put it on mine, and resell the toolbox without the drawer. You really don't ever see the drawers loose, which is a bummer. I was in a hurry here to get this set up, and I just made my peace with the fact that I could get another box but not a drawer. So all right, we'll look at this when I get it fully finished, or phase 1 finished. Okay, so I just set this bar straight through. Everything's sitting down for the most part, kind of tightly. Good enough for this project anyway. And so it lies there. And so I started it here where the bottom corner is going to line up with this sort of body line that's happening. And I marked the upper so that from that mark to the bottom corner it's going to be essentially that angle, which will finish that end kind of nice, and it'll sit on this edge. And then I marked the center location of this bolt hole and the center location of the other bolt hole. And then I put a mark on here where, once again, once I get the angle from the other end, I'll just throw the angle on here. I'll know it's going out in that direction. And then this will kind of terminate on that line, which you're not even going to look at it in this position. It will be in the other position. But I just wanted it to look kind of professional. And then, of course, these holes will be drilled in the exact center line of this piece, because I'm fairly certain that that's exactly where I'm trying to be, which is pretty rad. And I'll double check that. But of course, I don't want to be necessarily in this spot. You can see the one hole's already drilled here, but there's a hole on either side of this, and I want 2 fasteners per location, as wide apart as possible to offer the most stability. And so I just can see that that's where the bolt is that I've got on this box. It hasn't been drilled over here, and it has been drilled over there. But these are the 2 holes that I actually want to put into the piece and bolt up on this far end, which the one has already been drilled. So to start with, I'm going to get it back off, trimmed, and see if I can't get a center line measurement between these 2 holes and relative to this hole, and then use that position to plot those out. It's going to be asking a lot. Those are the types of things that the second you're off some, it should be a nice round number, basically. And so I'm going to be real careful here, because a pair of holes there and a pair of holes there, and then applied to the other end, the chances of them lining up is going to be pretty slim if I'm not very careful. So we'll see. All right, well, I got that piece in. Angles matched real nice. The bolt length that's necessary, I don't want a carriage bolt here. I'm just going to use a regular stainless hex head. The length that's necessary, I think that's 1.25 inches to get a nut on it after you're through this casting and through the 1/4 inch material. And I got the one in. There's 4 holes. I got one of 4. I just wanted one on the other side to see that we're holding everything on the level and stuff here without wasting more of my time. But what you'll find is that while that one, why was that possible? Oh, because I could get the end of this bar off the top of the truck over there, because I had degrees of flexibility here, and I could go down and I could sneak that length of bolt. The problem that I'm having now is this edge. I could sneak that length of bolt straight enough to come through the hole and go into the box on this side, because I could drive everything down towards the floor. And then I went up and onto the side of the truck over there, and now I can't get in down here and straighten up enough to come through the hole, because of the bottom of this toolbox's overhang. And I can't back that toolbox off any farther than here, because I'm practically touching. I had it over there already once. And opening it does nothing but scoot it closer, because this... So long story short, I'm down to 1 bolt that I can't install that has to be this long. The only thing I can do is pick this toolbox off of that side enough, because this shoulder's over. See that? And that's the part that I'm running into. So if I take the box up enough, I can do that. So let's get that done. And then if I need to, I'll pick the whole box straight up, and I'll put all the other 2 bolts in, so I got all 4. Now, I don't know what it is about Husky brand, which is the store brand from Home Depot, but you would think I'd love it because it's red and affordable and relatively good quality. But it's just something about Husky that turns me off. I don't know what it is. Regardless, this is the toolbox liner that you want, the drawer liner. This is the stuff that has like an inexplicable tackiness and has weight. It's not light and feathery. I mean, it is, but relatively speaking to the rest of what's available, it's heavier and has more body. This is the Harbor Freight stuff. This is more like, or Craftsman tools. It's 50% lighter, or 50% less dense to start with. Those are holes. And so there are benefits to that. It doesn't trap moisture, but this is better for setting a board on your workbench if you're woodworking, and operating on the top of it, keeping it from sliding around. This just doesn't seem to lie down and do the job. It moves all over in the drawer. I wish I had one of the drawers here. I got so sick of it. Anytime you'd open it, the collateral slide. Now here's a drawer I'm going to line, but the collateral slide. And there's another one. The collateral sliding of the tools. Oh, it's these drawers. It's these. Whoa! Watch yourself. Yeah. See this here? It's bunched itself all to the back. Yeah. That took it out of there already. Maybe up here. Heading a little better. Here's my breaker bars. It's always sliding them to the back. I don't know if it's because you only get, here's the plastic welder. It's always sliding to the back. I don't know if it's because for the surface area, you're only engaged with the drawer itself 50% because it's got 50% holes in it or something. But for whatever reason, you would think it would just point load those. I'm going to break it down too much here. But anyway, it's not what you want. You want the solid stuff. And I guess, go with your color of choice. But anyway, we're going to make razor cuts to width and length. And then I thought I could heat up and melt through it to make openings for the nuts that stick up. But there's fibers in here too. And they actually, while the foam melts, by the time you've got the fibers hot enough to cleanly cut through, the foam has receded away from the heat further, and it really isn't that clean of an edge. So I don't know what kind of fibers there, if it's nylon or something, but it's tough stuff too if you try to rip it. Anyway, I've just been tracing the washer with a razor blade to leave the openings in it. Okay, so got this puppy lined. Chose to take it up onto this surface by a little bit. Just to say it's in there, just bent up like this. There's a little piece here. I don't know whether he'll stay. This may get hot in the sun. First couple hot days we have this here. And, relax into like a memory of fitting into this space rather than what it's currently got. And it's chilly out, maybe like 55, high 50s. So, anyway, that's looking pretty sweet. I got those nuts and bolts. Where are we? Right there. Coming through, tightened down. I also babysat the bottom surface of the casting and the bottom surface of the aluminum bar because that was doing a little scissoring on those 2 points, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, and I went up and down with the jack, actually the car jack in the back, and just kept that level when I bolted everything up tightly. So for the most part, it's nice and square. Things measure out. I've got the back of the aluminum extrusion flushed out with this plane, which doesn't interrupt the tailgate shutting. But I think we're going to have to add, let's get Rich or somebody to add enough of a slab here with a T-slot in it or something, or 2 pieces of material, or 1 piece of material with a notch milled in it that's only that thick, come out here just to be able to slide further ahead. But you still are just tweaking on it like that unless you put a tiny little web in, and then you're welding here or taking this whole thing off, and it gets really expensive. So I'm going to try and avoid that scenario. Stowaway drawer. That's just complementary like shapes here to make a slide basically. Anyway, I just sprayed some dry lube up in there, but ultimately put some Johnson's paste wax on it also. Just brush through with Johnson's paste. That's inert and won't hurt the plastic runners that it uses to make it slide. So put liner in it. I got a shovel in there. The sledge could go in there. Actually, the heavy bar could go in there. It's a lot of excavation stuff and the marking paint thing. And then somewhere in there I'd like to put a 4-foot level and even the 2-foot level. But then they're rattling around with this stuff and they're kind of precision, so I might want to make a little pocket or add some utility here on the side. Unsure. And like that makes it sound like most of this is all thought out where I'm going to keep stuff. It isn't. I just wanted to get a sense of how much space there really is in these. I got my wrench rolls in here, my hand tool bag, what do you call those, screwdrivers, some brake cleaner, gloves, the funnel that keeps me full of water on this every location that I go with this thing while I wait to get my appointment in to fix it from boiling over all the time, which I could have been working on that component, but then I'd have no toolboxes to this point. So I chose to do this because I'm not going to hire out trying to customize secondhand garbage for my pickup. I'll hire out the wrenching on the engine so that it's going to be in running order. Plus that's, again, it's been really cold and this has been easier to do. I don't want to wrench and do mechanical work really, even though this seems similar, I guess. Anyway, seems to close. Oh, these tabs had like factory fresh outside right corners on them, and I don't know how somebody before me didn't like lacerate their arm and bleed to death. So I took that corner off as well. Threw some dry lube around liberally. Let's see, one last thing here. The first bolt that I went to, or the first nut that I went to turn off, we started here, where it was, the square part of it was turning in the T-slot. So I've got to move to the right or to the left in the T-slot to be able to trap a carriage bolt again and be able to tighten anything back up again, which just means I'm going to move this bolt hole inboard, which will just slide that fastener over in the track where it doesn't turn, and then I can tighten the nut on it. So I just put a mark there and put a dimple in there with a punch. I'm going to drill him out now, bolt the rest of that stuff up, and then, you know, take one final walk around, I guess. Well, that's not bad as far as leftovers go. We saw how that went in there, but surprise, surprise, I threw some in the miscellaneous, the Made in USA wrench drawer. I got rid of the Made in Taiwan, Made in China wrenches, but these were from the old farm. I've got the new hotness in rolls. I got the Milwaukee ratchet wobble head or whatever, and I got a nice, almost, let's check this out, total aside, some Made in America or Made in Japan. I can never remember when. Oh, these are Japanese. Japanese Craftsman. It's not complete. There's a couple randos back here and a fair amount of metrics missing. But it's just a nice crisp layout on those. Really like how these work and fit. But these are the Milwaukee liners that came with the wobble heads that are in the rolls in the truck. And then we got ye old drawer that totally distracted me. There's like the very tiniest piece that was left. I threw in with the carpentry hammers and bars, full liner for the measly little pliers. This whole thing is like dregs left over from the shop I grew up on. So there's cool stuff like big old sockets that are vintage with cool vintage things, and the peen drawer. And I think my uncle made this mallet, if I remember correctly. Somewhere on it are his initials, and obviously stuff that my grandfather had and his father, I think, made it here. And some vintage air tools that my uncle probably got for the farm shop back in the day. Anyway, so I threw liner in there. And then moved that hole over to that location. Dialed this, tightened it all up. These are pretty cool, how you can slide up and down that whole channel with this lug for a ratchet strap, but it can't go any farther than this now that that's there, and you can't put one on here at all if you're trying to open this drawer now. So there is a T channel in here, so I guess being able to go up or down or just commit to a location inside of those two places is worth it, but I gotta take that apart to slide them down in there. And I've also got figuring out how to make it so that this can be opened better instead of just sloshing in here for what little bit of open that it'll get and stuff without levering on other stuff. And the ladder rack itself has got to be screwed to the truck now because I don't have room for C-clamps. I'm going to use these holes and maybe make a few more of my own. And I've got some stainless steel self-tapping number 12 half-inch hex head drive screws that I'll put the ladder rack and attach to the truck with. And I'll just have to minimize how often they come out and go back in. Worst case scenario, someday it could turn into a nut and a bolt, but that would really, really suck because I hate those types of connections where you got to have two hands full of, not a nuts and bolts guys, be honest with you. And so I'll just peek in the cab because it's looking relatively clean right now. Things are looking kind of hunky-dory around here. And so, yeah. There's other things that I'd like to do, but for now that was, this is like what it can look like brand new from SystermOne. And, it would be awesome to have this multi-level drawer thing on one side. I have the ability to pick one and go and look, I think probably $200 or $300 at least for a brand new one, but that could be cool. God, I don't know why it could be twice that, I'm thinking now. Anyway, this whole thing is at least $3,500, if not closer to $4,500. I don't have the ladder pins and stuff, whatever those are, and I don't have any of this nice subdivision happening in here, really, or even in this big drawer. Obviously, you see it's one big cavity. So, several orders of magnitude cheaper by getting pieces here and there over the past 2 years, basically, and I did it for maybe $1,000, $1,100, which, I went out of state to get those, but we were going to Pennsylvania anyway, things like that. The neighbor gave me this box. I've done him favors and stuff with the skid steer, so there's, you know, an investment there. So being loose about what was laid out in terms of cash, under $1,000. All right, so let's go back to work now, eh? We'll see ya. We'll call this an epilogue if you hung around. Just FYI, I was hesitant to buy the full length side access boxes again because I had this already, but there's another benefit here, and I felt this coming with these on here, is an extreme lack of visibility. But if you notice my rear view mirror, I mean, I've got ostensibly, I still got a line of sight to here, and then out the back, and that's the same to the other side, and out the back, right out between the two toolboxes easily, and then right over my shoulder there to see if there's a vehicle trying to come up on me, plus my mirror, and right over this way, if I crank my head around, I can see right there, where if that were to have continued, I'd run the risk, especially with the trailer and stuff, of having somebody pinned to where they couldn't rip up past me fast enough, or back off from me and my full length, like again with a trailer in a theoretical, and I could pinch them against a guardrail or something shitty, and the whole thing would be shitty. So I'm glad of these sight lines. Now I also want to get, like I say, hope to get a multi-level drawer here, find it secondhand. If I get a screaming deal on a full deep one, again, well then that's what we'll do. They sell a cast cap for 4 and 6 inch pipe, I want to say, where you can permanently attach that and attach the cap thing, and the cap thing like locks. But anyway, you can put long sticks of stuff in there, which might be nice to have. And I got some red webbing. I got some red 1.5 inch straps coming that I'll just cut them 7 feet with a hook's worth, a coated hook, it's worth of it, and wrap them up so these will get fresh, because this is like growing mildew and stuff on it. So this will be freshened up a little bit. And then whatever this is, like a tape or something. I didn't have a lot of luck when I looked at this once before, but there's a chance I could just sandblast it out real quick or something, or maybe just, anyway, replacing that with black somehow would be nice to clean up the look of this thing. The weathered aluminum is one thing, but the weathered old, oh, and these are 2 different series. This is a cast-in surround with a sticker with a website on it, and this is, oh no, the website's on there too, and this is everything cast in completely. So that's 2 different eras of this same system, but other than that, the patina is about the same, which is cool. Okay, this has really been long and drawn out. Sorry. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you.